All right. Well, I guess we can go ahead and call to order this meeting of the PS Lit Committee for Monroe County, Indiana. And how should we do the roll call? Just each member say who they are and what their affiliation is? Yes? Mr. Lucas is shaking his head, so let's go with that. My name is Isabel Piedmont Smith. I'm with the Bloomington City Council. And next, let's go to Lois.
I'm Lois Purcell, Clerk Treasurer for the town of Steinsville.
Okay, Cheryl.
Cheryl Munson for Monroe County Council.
Jeff McKim.
Jeff McKim, also Monroe County Council.
Scott.
Scott Oldham, Phillipsville Town Council.
Ron.
Ron Smith, Bloomington City Council.
Jim.
Jim Sims, Bloomington City Council at-large member.
And Sue. You're muted.
Sue Scambolari, Bloomington City Council.
Thank you all for being here, and also to the staff who are present. First order of business is election of a chair for 2020. And I would like to nominate Cheryl Munson.
Second.
All right. Are there any other nominees?
I'm ready for competition.
All right.
Question.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations, Cheryl.
Thank you. This is the time for congratulations. I appreciate it.
I hand the virtual gavel to you.
Thank you. I've got it. It's called the mouse. And let's review our agenda for today. I think the first thing is we're checking on contact information for all the parties, followed by looking at last year's application and guidelines. And after that, also looking at last year's schedule for the summer of 2019, hopefully to guide us for our schedule this year. Then we'll have a discussion about lit rates and certified distributions. And two more items, the approved budget for Unified Central Dispatch for 2020 and additional materials that we may want to discuss. So,
excuse me, Cheryl. What you read is not what I see on the agenda. I mean, it is sort of the same topics, but in a different order. Are you viewing the June 4th agenda?
I'm sorry, I didn't read from the screen. I read from what Mr. Lucas sent us.
Well, so this is the same thing that Mr. Lucas sent us.
Let us just shuffle the order here, and first we'll have the overview of income tax rates, followed by the Unified Central Dispatch expenditures report, and then we'll discuss how to review applications and the guidelines and application form, and finally we'll talk about this committee's schedule for the summer. All right. Sorry that I don't have the current agenda in front of me. So, Mr. Lucas, since I do not, will you notice when the next item is up for business?
Yes, absolutely. I think the first speaker here would be Jeff Underwood, who's here to comment on the overview of tax rates and revenues and distributions. And if he's ready, he, I think, is up first. He's giving us the thumbs up.
He's got the right hat on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Speaking to you from Chateau Underwood here. Just briefly, I'll cover the final 2020 dollar amounts and the allocations to the various groups. So, and I think Stephen was able to send that out to you shortly before the meeting. So the final total amount that was distributed, that will be distributed, is $8,654,679, and that is equal to a 0.250 rate, which is the certified rate for public safety. Of that, $2,263,238 was appropriated and allocated to the PSAP or central dispatch. Sorry, Matt. Because of rounding errors, that left an additional $826 that would have gone into the PS Lit fund that the county maintains, and that would be $826 that was unappropriated nor spent either on PSAP or to any of the other units.
Okay.
You allocated last year $389,461 to certified providers, leaving $6,001,154 to be distributed to the four units. And just a quick overview, as you remember, the public safety lit is one of three categories in the local income tax. There's what we call certified shares, there's edit, and then there's public safety. Currently, the city and county have a certified shares rate, which is distributed to obviously a greater number of people. We've not allocated anything in the edit rate, and we've allocated 0.25% in public safety. And the statute for that is that essentially that is created to fund a central dispatch, and all dollars allocated to a central dispatch come off the top of any revenues that are collected. So that's why you kind of see that as the first item. The statute does allow, because it's only distributed to the four units, so Monroe County, City of Bloomington, Ellettsville, and Steinsville, it does allow for the tax council to receive applications, and then they don't have to do anything with them other than receive them. They may review them, and they may allocate funds to those, which we did last year. You all did last year in the amount of $389,461. Prior to last year, the entire group participated in receiving and reviewing those allocations. Last year, this subcommittee made a recommendation on a percentage or a dollar amount, and then the county received and reviewed those applications and distributed that amount. Those dollars also come off the top. So as you see, it kind of in the priority order. So that's how we get down from the total of $8,654,679 down to what is the distributive shares for the four units of government that you see. And of that, 45.9% went to the county, 51.19% went to the city, 2.84% went to Ellettsville, and approximately, it's a little bit less than that, 2% went to town of Steinsville. So you can see the allocation amounts for the four groups. We've been lucky, we've been very fortunate is that this pot of money has grown over the years, with 2020 being the largest number that we've gotten so far. That's the good news. The bad news is we all know that it's not going to be that amount for next year. Unfortunately, this group meets early on. We don't start getting estimates on what lit will be, and that's both the distributive shares and public safety, until July and August. And just a reminder that once you get the certified distributions based on the actions that you take and based on the certified shares, that amount is guaranteed to all the parties. The state does collect and keeps a reserve so that if there are shortfalls in any year, they're able to make those up and make sure that the units get the monies that were prescribed. It's unique to the lit. Everything else is based on actual calculations. So, we will for this year get our allocations for 2020, but I'm certain that there's going to be a fairly significant drop in those revenues for 2021. So I just did some quick calculations, and these are just back of the napkins because we have no idea at this point. And I'd be happy for Jeff McKim to jump in as well, as he's a very good financial analyst for us all as well. But assuming that we had a 25% loss in revenues for a total of 4 months, that would be a decrease of $721,223 off of that $8.6 million. If we had a 50% loss for 4 months, that number jumps up to $1,442,446. And if we had a 75% loss for 4 months, that would be a loss of $2,163,670. So I am anticipating that we're going to be somewhere probably in that range. And that was basically saying April, May, June, July would be the months that you would see that drop and the potential amounts that will be. So it's not going to be a good picture for next year. Obviously all 4 units have needs greater than what gets funded every year. It has been, very fortunate that y'all enacted this, and for speaking on behalf of the city, we appreciate the fact that we've been able to fund central dispatch out of this revenue stream, as well as significant capital improvements to both the police and fire departments for the city, as I know, as well for the county and Ellisville and Sinesville. That said, then I'll make my annual statement / plea is I think this going into 2021, given the fact that there's going to be significant losses of revenues and the demands that the 4 units of government have, along with the fact that we've seen a consolidation of the township fire departments, and I think that will be completed fairly soon with Benton Township, which I'm a member of, being the last township to come into line for that consolidation. That would have then all the townships not inside the corporate limits under one fire protection. And given their ability to reset their tax rates each time they consolidate, I'm confident that they should be able to have adequately funded their needs through those tax rates that will be supported by the citizens that reside in those areas. So my plea for you this year is that you would consider no additional allocations to those providers, as they should be able to provide for themselves. There's going to be a significant loss of revenues, and we have significant needs in those 4 groups. So that will help offset some of that loss. So again, we think that that there'll be funding available to the unified fire protection areas as they've consolidated and updated their tax rates, and that it's the time for us to let those revenues fall to the 4 units of governments as it was allocated in the statute. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or move on to the next item. Thank you very much.
Thanks. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, please do. Anyone? For Mr. McKeon.
Yeah, so don't you think that any loss in income tax will also hit the fire protection district as well? So I mean, they're also going to be, they're dependent certainly on property tax, but they're also going to get an income tax distribution. So they're going to see a shortfall just like the other underlying units of government if there's any kind of an income tax shortage.
Well, I think the difference there, Jeff, is, and I don't disagree, but I think that's a very small portion of what they get. They're funding that it's primarily property tax based, and they've been able to re-index that rate as they've consolidated. So that should allow them to take into account a small shortfall in local income taxes that go to them out of that distributive shares. And you can see by the distributions that, they're very small when you get down to the township levels after you take out the city and the county and a lot of that is also used for township operations. So I don't think a significant portion of that actually flows down to fire protection. So I think they'll be okay. They'll take a hit, but not like we're going to see.
So I would like to comment on this point because not all the unincorporated areas of the county are served by Monroe Fire Protection District or will join in January 1. I don't know what the date might be for Benton, and maybe you have some idea, Mr. Underwood, but Bloomington Township and Van Buren Township are slated to join January 1. That does leave Richland and Bean Blossom without being part of the fire protection district. And they have traditionally sought some supplemental support from the public safety lit.
And that wouldn't preclude any of the 4 units, as I talk about, from providing funds to those providers as well. So that would allow Ellettsville, the dollars would flow to them. And then if they wanted to allocate some of those dollars to Richland, Bean Blossom, it certainly would allow them to do that, as well as for Benton. I think Benton and Washington would be January 1 of 2022. I think they're the next 2 to fall into that, because I know Washington and Bloomington had to go through the process of decoupling, so that allowed Bloomington to come in, and then Washington Township can fall next. So I think Washington Township and Benton are slated for January 1st, 2022.
So other questions or comments for Mr. Underwood? Mr. Sims?
Thank you. Mr. Underwood, are you aware of any discussions in the state legislature slated toward possibly making it permanent, some of the rates for the qualified service providers as part of our PS lit? Or is that something that we should, is that true or untrue? Or is that something we should be concerned with moving on to the future? Or
I can give you historic, and then I can give you what what I believe will happen. And I think it was alluded to by our county friends, is that there was certainly an attempt in last year's legislature to change the funding stream from the current, which is basically the 4 PSAP and then the 4 units, to PSAP and then distributive shares. That's a much larger group. We would allow those funds to go directly to them, and then would eliminate this very process that we've done the last 4 years. I certainly think there'll be an attempt to do that again, and I put my city hat back on now, as I think that would be unfortunate, because it would lead to a loss of revenues for the city itself. And Mr. Sims, you're very aware of the capital needs that we have, and we've tried to restrict our use of the lit to capital only, but we're getting more and more pressures. Public safety is a significant part of the city's general fund budget and overall budget, and continues to do so as their needs grow. So, it would be, I think what we might see is that if it gets changed and more people are availed to the funding, is that we might have to seek an increase to that rate to make the 4 units whole again. Because again, every one of those units have needs greater than the amounts that get funded by the public safety lit rate.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, I wanted to follow up on Mr. Sims' question. Mr. Underwood, do I understand correctly that there was legislation being considered that would mean distributed shares would go to all taxing units and not just the 4 that currently get them after the dispatch is funded?
I think it was primarily slated to be a hybrid between distributed shares and the current, which would allow each of the townships that had a certified provider to get a rate. So essentially almost all the townships. It would eliminate library and some of the other smaller units, but essentially all of the townships have certified providers. So Mr. McKim's raising his hand because I know he's probably more in tune with that, but I believe that was primarily what was looked at last year.
But that would be after we fund dispatch, right?
Yes, dispatch that would not change, I don't believe. The idea is the state very much wants to have centralized dispatch in every county, and they're getting close to that. So the idea behind that is that always gets funded first, and then it would change the distribution. So this group would meet to make a recommendation to the 2 fiscal bodies, which eventually approve the final budget for central dispatch. It obviously goes through it goes through you all, it goes through the policy oversight board, and then the 2 units, county and city staff as well, reviewing that and approving it, moving up through. So it's the most detailed and looked at budget of any budget in any of the units of government. But I don't believe that would change. I don't think there's any pressure. In fact, I think it's the other way, is that they would seek to preserve that, but then change the distribution after that.
So I think Mr. McKim had a question or comment.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments on that. First of all, I do agree that with Mr. Underwood that the PSAP allocation is pretty deep in this legislation, pretty deeply embedded. I was actually on the summer study committee for the General Assembly that came up with the approach that allowed us to even adopt a public safety tax without adopting a levy freeze tax in addition. And it all stemmed from the desire to make sure that every county had a well-funded PSAP. And so yeah, I don't see that going anywhere either. Now, all that said, I think it's always a mistake to try to game out what the General Assembly is going to do at a future session, because anything could happen. And there also are movements afoot. There was one a couple of years ago that will probably come back to totally restructure the local income tax and actually split out the city and county rates separately, so that the county could have a countywide rate, and then the city could have an additional rate on top of that. That did not pass at the time, at least partially because the state software was unable to handle multiple taxing districts for lit the way they can for property tax. But that's apparently being fixed. They're currently working on an upgraded system that would allow that. And so I certainly anticipate at least some kind of restructuring to be discussed. So I think, we work with what we've got. We don't, and then we advocate for what we want. But I think there are a lot of changes to the lit environment that could possibly be coming in the future. And I, for one, support the decoupling of the city and the county lit rate. So
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Underwood or comments on this topic? So I have a question. You said July and August, which is the usual schedule for the state to report what likely public safety lit allocations will be available to us. And can you be more specific on those dates?
I'll have to double check, but I think the final certification comes August 1st.
August 1st. Memory serves.
I think this is a weird one because it comes from the state budget agency rather than the Board of Accounts or the Department of Local Government Finance.
Okay.
And I think in July, usually mid-July, they release a county-wide total. And they give you, here's our estimate for for the 3 buckets, and we only have the 2. So they'll they'll release, we think it's going to be this much for distributive shares and this much for public safety. So we start refactoring after that, kind of based on, the percentages from the current year. And then they actually give us the detailed breakdown right around August the 1st, where it breaks it down by all the units of government. And it's basically the certified amounts that you can plug in.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Other questions for Mr. Underwood? Thank you all. Mr. Lucas, can you take us to the next agenda item?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr.
The next item on the agenda is a report on Central Dispatch, and I believe Amy Hensley and Mike Rooker are both here. I assume Miss Hensley will be up first, and I see she's on the call. Miss Hensley, are you available to present? Let me see. I know she messaged me earlier and was having trouble connecting to the audio, so she was going to call in. Mr. Rooker, I don't know if you'd like to kick things off while Miss Hensley gets her audio sorted out.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about where things stand at the dispatch budget, which is that they are very preliminary at this point. I know the city and the county have had a preliminary couple of meetings just to discuss the sketch of a budget for 2021. I think, as Mr. Underwood alluded to, this is an extremely interesting year in terms of how public safety, local income tax, and income taxes in general, that revenue will look. But we did put a budget together. I know there's been correspondence between folks from the county and folks at the city and at dispatch about what that budget will look like. The next step in that process is for that budget, once the city and county folks sort of have an agreement about how the budget will look, how much will be funded by PS Lit, and how much will be funded by 911 funds. Once we have an agreement on that, is to go to a special session of the Dispatch Policy Board, which would issue a recommendation on the budget. Right now, although we have not firmly scheduled this, we are considering the date of June 16th, Tuesday, June 16th at 10 a.m. for that special session. And we would have more information on what the 2021 budget would look like after that. I can tell you, based on the preliminary sorts of proposals that have been going around, there are no drastic changes to, nothing I would describe as a drastic change to the dispatch budget. There are some recommendations that were received by dispatch from a consulting firm that the city and county hired, Novak Consulting, to look at dispatch budget operations that we are working towards implementing in the 2021 budget. But again, it's still pretty preliminary to be talking about those things until we get a recommended budget from the policy board. And I'm happy to do my best to address any questions. I know hopefully Amy will get on the call. I think, is Jeff Cockrell from the county here?
No, but Margie Rice is here.
Oh, Margie is here. Okay, and I don't remember, Margie, I'm sorry, my memory is failing me. So much has happened. I don't remember who from the county was involved in those meetings. I know Angie Purdy was, and I can't remember if it was you or Jeff Cockrell or both of you during those meetings about the dispatch budget. But we can do our best to answer any questions you may have.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Hello, Amy.
Sorry,
Hi.
I didn't realize you were on a phone and a video. I don't know if you have anything to add to what Mike just presented.
That's pretty much it. We aren't doing any major projects next year because the protocol project is a very large project, and it was purchased at the very end of 2018, and we are just this year in a position to implement it. So it will take most of this year to implement, and then it'll be, since it is new, we want to give them all of next year to get used to it and before jumping into any major projects again. And when I look at our hardware and software is in pretty good shape. So I don't know that we are in the need next year to make any major changes. So that has allowed us to keep our capital requests very minimal.
Thank you. Mr. Sims?
Thank you. And if I misspeak, someone can please correct me. But at least once previously during my tenure on this board, the central dispatch budget was realigned or reduced in order to add some funds for the qualified service providers, or maybe to induce what we were doing with that. And if I'm correct in that, I believe I am, but is there any chance of that? What are we looking at with regard to that? Is there an opportunity that the central dispatch budget could be reduced in order to free up more of those funds? Or do you think from this estimate that they'll pretty much, with what we just heard from Ms. Hensley, that they'll pretty much use whatever the projections are?
I'll jump in there,
Good.
Jim. It wasn't necessarily a reduction in the overall dispatch budget. It actually has grown each year, but there were additional, as a reminder, central dispatch gets funded out of two pots of money: public safety lit and the E911 funds. And there were additional funds available to us via the county. So there was a reduction. What you see if you look at the historic amounts is we were actually able to reduce the amount of PSAP money that or PS lit money that we were requesting, because there was an increase in the E911.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate any major changes in that funding formula. I do know that you will continue to see a tight review between the county and the city of what's necessary to fund the department. We try not to make it too tight so that they have enough funds. It has been recommended that each year that we add staffing. Mike Rooker alluded to that report, and Amy can add additional information. But we're reviewing what they're stating, which was a significant increase in staff, which we've kind of been doing over the last few years, but we've chosen to phase that in, and I'm sure that's the approach that we would continue to take. So I don't anticipate that you're going to see any ability to reduce the budget, and I don't think we'll see any significant change in the funding between the two funds. So I anticipate that you'll see a budget that's fairly close, with some normal increases in the final dispatch budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Ms. Piedmont-Smith.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say welcome, Ms. Hensley. I don't think that we have had the opportunity to be in a meeting together yet, and you are relatively new as the dispatch director, so thank you for being here virtually. Can you remind us or tell us, also for the benefit of the public, what is the protocol project that you're implementing this year?
I was just going to ask.
So the learning curve for a dispatcher is huge, because the protocols reflect what they send out and what's needed on each individual type of call that dispatchers receive requesting assistance. And the training curve for a new dispatcher to learn all those protocols, and even as things change for different departments, the social environment changing and having to make adjustments in coverage, those are ever changing. And the protocols are a set software program that prompts the dispatcher so that there aren't things on individual calls that we miss.
Thank you. Further questions, Ms. Piedmont-Smith?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate Mr. Roker and Ms. Hensley being here today, and we'll be seeing them again, I know. I believe we're ready for the next agenda item, Mr. Lucas.
Sure. So the next item on the agenda, if the committee is ready to discuss it, is the conduct of review of applications. And just by way of reminder, last year, for the first time, this committee delegated the review of applications to the county council after first setting a set percentage that would be made available to the qualified service providers. This year, I don't know what the committee's preference would be, but this is the opportunity to discuss that and see what you all want to do.
Thank you. Last year, I think our percentage was 6%, or it came out 6.09% after funding the PSAP. And I'll ask Mr. Underwood to check that if he's still with us. And I'm not sure he is. Yes, he is. He's up. Mr. Underwood, you need to unmute. Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. Took a little bit of time. I will double check that number. I think it was, of the overall amount was 4.65% of the total. And I think adjusted, yeah, it would be somewhere around 6%.
Okay, so 4.65 approximately. And as it worked out after funding the PSAP, the spreadsheet shows that it would be 6.09% of the remaining funds. So would anybody like to discuss this matter now? Mr. McKim.
Yes, I actually want to bring something up that's actually very important to our deliberations here. And I literally just, I mean, I knew that there was something that the governor had released a new executive order yesterday, but actually the content of that executive order is quite important to the work we do. So the governor did issue another executive order yesterday that changed a number of the tax deadlines. And in particular, well, there are a couple of things that are important. First of all, they extended the deadline to September 15th for the state budget agency to provide estimates of the local income tax revenue. That's literally just breaking news. And then also extended till October 15th, certifications of the local income tax revenue. So the whole process of us knowing how much lit we have to work with is going to be significantly pushed out in time.
Yeah.
The other, oh, sorry,
Jeff,
Mr. Underwood had a comment about that.
As a part of that executive order, did he extend the deadlines for units of government to adopt budgets? Because, like, you know, for the city, it's like November the 3rd. Well, if we're not going to get certification, I mean, we wouldn't even be able to have a public hearing within the prescribed time with those dates.
I don't see anything related to budgets in that executive order. It's pretty short. It's on the state. If you just go to the Indiana Governor Executive Orders page, it's the most recent one. And then the other piece that's important is that he's also changed the time frame for, yes, there it is. If you want to go down to, I think it's scroll down. The next section, yeah, an extension of certain tax deadlines. So the first two are relevant to those estimates and certifications that we just talked about, A and B. And then if you scroll down, C and D are extensions of the window of time that is used to consider individual tax filings as belonging to a particular year in which the lid is distributed. So in other words, now tax filings, amended returns or annual returns that are processed all the way up to August 31st will be counted for the distributions that will occur in 2021. So remember, 2021 actually, lit distributions are actually income that's earned in 2019. So that's actually already, that income's already in the can. The question is how the the tax returns are counted. And normally it's June 30th is the deadline, but because the filing deadline was extended, apparently the state has just extended that window for what counts for the year 2021. So basically any personal income tax returns that are filed all the way up to August 31st, 2020 will be counted in the revenue that is distributed in 2021. In general, that's a good thing. That means that there will be little to no hit expected in 2020 or 2021 as far as lit goes. But the hit will then occur in 2022. So the hit is going to be deferred a little bit. And then the next section, section D, basically adjusts those deadlines for what gets distributed in 2022. So you understand what I'm saying, that there's going to be the hit from the economy is going to be felt in the lit we receive in 2022. But unfortunately, because of these delays, we're not going to know exactly what we have to work with till quite late in the year.
Right.
That's based on like 2 minutes reading of those executive orders. So please let's spend time, and our legal staff will spend time processing it.
So very, very important. Thank you, Mr. McKim. There's something else that's relevant, and I think our staff will need to look at this, and that's the required dates under state statute by which decisions must be made regarding public safety allocations to qualified service providers. Do you recall that? Date specifically, Mr. Lucas or Ms. Rice?
Mike Rooker may have those. While he's coming on board, I was going to add, for those of you that don't know, is every unit of government has a deadline for which they have to have their budgets approved by the fiscal body. In the case of the city, I believe it's around November the 3rd. So that's why I was asking the question of, sometimes there's unintended consequences to decisions to delay things. And if they're not going to tell us what those certified revenues are going to be, we'll either have to amend our budgets or they may extend those out, because under state statute, the Department of Local Government Finance is also required to have certified budget orders to every unit of government by December 31st, so that as we go into the fiscal year, we know for each of those funds what those are appropriated. So there's going to be I'm sure a cascading effect that's going to come out of this latest executive order.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure that we look at any changes in schedule for what this committee must decide and take back to our city and county councils. Mr. Lucas?
I know in normal years, the funding for QSPs needs to be done before the end of August. I believe it's before September 1st. And applications for funding from the QSPs, as the committee knows, should be filed before July 1st, so by the end of June. And how these extensions affect that, I've not had time to discuss that with city legal or county legal. So as Jeff just pointed out, this came out yesterday, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this will affect our scheduling for sure. Mr. Sims?
Okay. I thought someone was welcoming me with that nice music.
It was nice.
What I was thinking about, and of course, this committee would decide on a percentage or a dollar amount that may go to the qualified service providers. What in the event, how would all this be affected in the event that this committee voted not to set such a percentage? For an example, if we voted to fund dispatch, which is what we mainly do, and then do the rest of the distributive shares accordingly without the QSPs. So, and I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen today, but how would that affect us, Mr. Lucas? Would we have to still approve zero amount?
Jeff Underwood may have a comment.
I was just going to say, yeah, if you do not vote to fund any of the public, the certified providers, essentially you would approve a rate for dispatch, and then it just would go down to the normal distributions to the 4 units. So you would see that amount that was set aside, the $300 and some thousand dollars, would then get distributed based on the percentages that was in the spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Mr. Oldham has a question or comment.
Thank you. For either Stephen or Jeff, I believe the law requires that we at least allow them to make applications before. Therefore, it kind of seems like we would be going backwards by saying we're not going to give you any, but you can still apply.
That
So
is an excellent point.
So I don't know the way, man. I'd be a little premature in our discussions about what we're going to vote on or not vote on if we do it today, as opposed to just following the normal path as we have in years past.
Mr. McKim? You're mute.
Sorry, I wonder if it might not make sense to have one of the legal staff talk to some of the staff at the state to see if they've even considered extending the deadlines similarly to the way that they've extended it for tax calculations. I mean, there's so much of a cascading effect for all of these changes. And they probably, there aren't that many counties that that have this QSP procedure. There just aren't that many that distribute money to the QSPs. I think we've been more proactive on that, and so that may not even be on the state's radar unless we make it on the state's radar. So that would probably be my suggestion before even making any decisions, is to do some serious outreach to the governor's office or to the Department of Local Government Finance and see if there's even been any discussion or if any rulemaking is in process to adjust the deadlines for the QSP decision.
Thank you. That's very much needed. Other questions or comments? Mr. Lucas.
I just wanted to respond to what Mr. Oldham stated. The statute does include a provision that says these qualified service providers may apply for funding, and that the council shall review those applications. So I believe there is a duty to review those applications, and this year, with all that's gone on, it's kind of thrown a wrench in the timeline to do all that. So I'm happy to work with county legal or whoever needs to reach out to the State House if that's what the committee wants to pursue.
Hey, Stephen, this is Mike Rooker. If I might jump in on that point, though, just very quickly to respond to Mr. Oldham as well. I see that there may be a deadline extension, and that's a good thing to check into, and I appreciate Councilmember McKim pointing that out. However, in the past, we have heard from these QSPs that preparing all of the paperwork required for the review has been a pretty significant expenditure of their resources, of their limited resources. And so it might be helpful on the front end if there is no intention to do distributions to QSPs. It might save them all that time and effort, particularly at this particular moment when we all know our resources are stretched thinner than usual due to a number of difficulties that we're all experiencing as local government agencies. So it might be helpful on the front end to say, look, there probably isn't going to be a distribution if that's something the committee knows. That's just a thought. So.
Cheryl might have dropped off the call.
Yeah, so go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not there yet. Obviously we're a minority party in this, but I'm not there yet in terms of saying no distributions for the QSPs. But I would like to see, to any degree that we can, if we can get more time, or if we have more time to make those decisions. I agree that we don't want to put the fire departments through a big grant application process that we have no intention of funding. But I just personally, I think that the fire departments are going to see revenue challenges just like everybody else. maybe not to the same magnitude, but they definitely still are going to see revenue challenges, and I don't want to write them off completely yet. That's just me.
It seems like it might be.
Well, I was going to say Isabel's the previous chair until Cheryl gets back. We don't have a vice chair.
I think Cheryl just Cheryl just texted me. She got a call. She may or may not be coming back. But we also have a county council meeting in 6 minutes, so we're both going.
She just connected
Okay, good.
via phone, I think.
Did you just say that you and Cheryl have to leave in a few minutes? Jeff?
Cheryl, you're muted.
Sorry, we have a meeting in 5. We have a county council special meeting that is actually going to be quite controversial that we have in 5 minutes. So we
may want to jump ahead to scheduling then. If we're not going to be able to sort out all these questions today, while the committee's all here, maybe we want to pick a date where we can get back together and resume. And hopefully between now and then, county legal or city legal can do some more research on the timeline and what that means for the committee's process. How does that sound?
I would support that approach.
Good idea.
We'll need to give at least 48 hours notice. So I don't know when the committee would next like to meet.
How much time do you feel legal needs to do the work? A week? Is that too much, too little?
I mean, I would say yes. Just because it's dependent on getting in touch with people in the state, and maybe they have an answer, maybe they don't. There are a lot of, so I would not personally, I would not want to make the timeline too tight.
And here's another consideration. If the state does not extend any of these deadlines, then the applications from QSPs would be due by the end of June, and making that application available to them along with any guidelines the committee has. We're already, it's less than a month from now, so.
Can we meet next Wednesday or Thursday?
Yes.
It's fine with me.
I mean, is noon a good time for people? No, Mr. Oldham is saying no.
I have a little conflict that I have to make sure that I am avoiding.
There is a city council meeting on Wednesday evening. There's a Jack Hopkins committee meeting on Thursday evening.
Is an 8 a.m. meeting a possibility for people? Is that better?
With me, it is.
Okay by me.
I love 8 a.m. meetings. You can even make it 7 a.m. if you want.
Morning person.
Someone please mute Jeff and Kim right about now.
So
is this next Thursday we're talking about?
That was my proposal, yes.
That's our proposal.
Again, virtually.
Well, if 8 is good, then 9 is a little better.
I would support 9.
Would 9 o'clock work for people?
I did hear Scott ask about virtual meetings. I believe the state's executive order extends to June 11th. I think we can meet through June 11th virtually. So
is that not extended yesterday on the governor's new criteria?
I'll have to look. I think as long as the previous order extended to June 11th, it may even be beyond that now.
I think it went deeper from yesterday.
Okay.
If I may add, I'll retract my last statement. 8 would be better since I do have something scheduled at 10 that day.
If we could do 8, that would be great for me.
8 a.m. is better. You win, Jeff.
8 a.m. is good.
Okay.
Hello.
I'm hearing June 11th at 8 a.m.
Cheryl, does that work for you?
Cheryl just got her phone connected so I could hear the deliberations without contributing to them. Okay. Is it 9 a.m. or 8?
8.
8.
Sure. Is this a Zoom meeting?
Yes.
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 Fine.
I will send out similar information that I did for this meeting. I'll prepare a notice and share that with all of the members so that they can use that how they need to, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so thank you very much. And maybe we'll have some further research regarding that's relevant to our scheduling by then.
Thank you.
Well,
So are we ready to adjourn this meeting?
Yes, and good luck for your contentious county council meeting. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued what that would be.
Okay, it'll be on Cats. You guys can all watch it. So thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you to the staff, especially all of them, and to Cats. And if there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Sims has got his hand up.
Oh, I can't see Mr. Sims.
Oh, no, that's okay. It's not
my phone.
important. First of all, I think Ms. Purcell is the only one I didn't get a chance to speak to, so it's good to see you. And the second thing, is there a motion needed for adjournment? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So see you next week then.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everybody.
much, Cheryl. Bye.